thousands of kilometers from the nearest city, and yet people still call these places home. Imagine this. The nearest petrol station is 700 kilometers away. The nearest doctor? A 1-hour flight if the weather permits flying. Fresh vegetables? Delivered once a month by truck if the roads aren't flooded, washed out, or blocked by wandering cattle. Your nearest neighbor? Maybe 50 kilometers down a dusty track that disappears in sandstorms. Mobile phone reception, a luxury you learn to forget, replaced by crackling radio and the endless silence of the outback. Internet? Satellite only, and it cuts out when clouds roll in. For most of us, this sounds like a nightmare, a punishment, an impossible way to live. But for thousands of Australians, this is everyday life. This isn't just isolation. This is a completely different way of existing, a different relationship with time, space, and community. They live in towns so remote that even Google Maps barely shows any details. Places where summer temperatures regularly hit 50 degrees Celsius, where cyclones can wipe out entire settlements, and where the next human settlement is further away than London is from Rome. Why do people voluntarily live in such extremes? Is it stubbornness? Tradition? Or is there something in the Australian psyche that not only endures isolation, but actively seeks it? The truth is more complex than a simple yes or no. In a world where millions are moving into overcrowded megacities, there are still places where the nearest human voice might be 200 kilometers away. Today, we take you on a journey to the 12 most isolated towns in Australia, places that redefine what isolation truly means. Welcome to this extraordinary exploration of the Australian outback and its most stubborn inhabitants. We've listened to your comments, and today, we're bringing you a realistic assessment of the most extreme inhabited places on the continent. If you appreciate stories that go beyond postcard images and show the true nature of human adaptability, then subscribe to our channel now and activate the bell. A like supports our independent research. Let's dive deep into the red earth. The geography of isolation. Why Australia is different. To understand why these towns exist and why people stay, you first need to talk about the sheer size of Australia. The continent is almost as large as the entire United States, but has only 26 million inhabitants. 90% of them live in coastal cities, clustered around Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, Perth, and Adelaide. This means that the interior of the country, an area larger than Western Europe, is inhabited by fewer people than a medium-sized German city. This emptiness is not a modern development. It is burned into the DNA of the continent. The Australian outback is one of the driest, hottest, and most hostile places on Earth. Ancient, weathered, and unforgiving. If you want to understand why a town is isolated, you need to grasp the distances. In Europe, you drive 500 kilometers and cross 3 countries, pass through dozens of towns, see thousands of people. In Australia, you drive 500 kilometers and might see 2 cars and a dead kangaroo baking on the asphalt. The horizon never changes. The landscape stays the same. Red earth, sparse scrub, endless sky. This isolation is not romantic. It is brutal. It kills the unprepared within hours, and it shapes the people who stay into something harder, something different. It is an isolation that is not only geographical, but psychological, changing how people think about time, distance, and what it means to be connected. Number 1. Kiwirrkurra, Western Australia, the most remote community on the continent. Kiwirrkurra is the place where isolation becomes a life philosophy. Located 1,200 kilometers west of Alice Springs, deep in the Gibson Desert, this indigenous community is the most remote inhabited place in Australia. About 150 people live here, mainly members of the Pintupi people, one of the last Aboriginal groups to come into regular contact with European Australians. The nearest major settlement? That's not a town. That's a concept that remains unreachable for most. Kiwirrkurra has no paved roads, no supermarket, no bank, no post office. Versorgungsflüge kommen unregelmäßig, depending on weather and pilot availability. In the wet season, the community can be cut off for weeks. Why do people live here? The answer lies in the connection to the land. For the Pintupi, this is not simply a place. It is the land of their ancestors, the place where their creation stories are rooted, the place where their dreams begin and end, the place where their identity is inseparable from the red sand and Spinifex grass. After decades of forced relocation to missions and government settlements, they returned here in the 1980s, walking back across hundreds of kilometers of desert, not because it was easy, but because it was their land, their home, their soul. This is not a sentimental decision. It is existential. In Kiwirrkurra, people live because the alternative, leaving the land, would mean giving up part of their identity, severing the connection that has sustained their culture for tens of thousands of years. You can measure isolation in kilometers, but you cannot measure what it means to the people who belong here, for whom this isolation is not loneliness, but belonging. Number 2, Cook, South Australia, the ghost town with 5 residents. Cook is what remains when the economy leaves a town, but the stubbornness of people stays. Once a thriving railway town on the Trans-Australian Railway, only 5 people live here permanently today. The nearest town, Ceduna, is 480 kilometres to the east. What keeps these 5 people here? The railway. Cook exists as a maintenance station for trains travelling through the Nullarbor Plain, one of the longest straight railway lines in the world, stretching 478 kilometres without a single curve. The residents operate a small petrol station, a motel for travellers brave enough to stop, and maintain the infrastructure that keeps the trains running. Their life is routine, dictated by the train schedule, interrupted by occasional trains rumbling through at odd hours, and rare tourists who take photos of the famous old school that has been empty for decades, its windows broken, its playground silent, a relic from a time when Cook was a vibrant community of hundreds. But there is something deeper here. Cook is a monument to human persistence, to refusing to be erased. It is a place that says, we will not give up, even when there is no logical reason to stay, even when the government would prefer we disappeared. The residents do not talk much about philosophy or meaning. They repair rails, pump diesel, fix equipment, and sleep under a starry sky so clear, so brilliant with stars, that most people only see in photographs or dreams. This is their choice, and they defend it against all criticism, against all rational arguments for leaving. Number 3, Coober Pedy, South Australia, the underground opal capital. Coober Pedy is isolated, but it is also bizarrely successful. Located 850 kilometres north of Adelaide, about 1,700 people live in a town that exists half underground. Why? Because summer temperatures regularly reach 50 degrees Celsius, sometimes climbing even higher, turning the surface into an unlivable furnace. And the only way to survive is to live underground. Residents have dug their homes, churches, even an entire hotel into the rock, creating an inverted city beneath the desert. Above ground is hell, blinding light and scorching heat. Underground, it is a constant 25 degrees, all year round, cool and quiet, a refuge from the extreme climate. Some homes are elaborate, carved into the hillsides with multiple rooms, skylights, and all modern conveniences. Others are basic, just a hollowed space with a door. But people are not here because of the weather. They are here because of opals. Coober Pedy produces 70% of the world's opal supply, gemstones that shimmer with fire and brilliant color. That means money, and money attracts people, even to the most inhospitable places on Earth. The town is a strange mix of adventure and desperation. Miners from 45 nations dig for opals, hoping for the one find that will make them rich. The one stone worth hundreds of thousands. Some have spent their entire lives here and found nothing. Most find nothing. Some find enough to keep going, enough to pay for food and rent. Few actually get rich, but the dream keeps them here, the gambler's hope, along with the fact that Coober Pedy is surprisingly a functioning community despite its strangeness. There are schools, churches, even an underground hotel for tourists who want to experience the bizarre life below ground. The isolation is real, but it is mitigated by economic opportunity. Coober Pedy proves that people will live almost anywhere if there is enough incentive. Number 4. Wittenoom, Western Australia. The toxic ghost town that refuses to die. Wittenoom is the darkest story on this list. Officially, the town no longer exists. The government removed it from all maps in 2007, deleted the postcode, and urged residents to leave. Why? Because the ground is contaminated with asbestos fibres. Wittenoom was once the centre of Australian asbestos mining, and thousands of former workers have died from mesothelioma. The air is contaminated. The buildings are contaminated. Even the wind carries death. Every breath in Wittenoom is a risk. The government has conducted studies showing that asbestos exposure is many times above any safe limit, and yet 3 people still live there. They refuse to leave. One of them, an elderly man, says he has spent his entire life here, and if asbestos wants to kill him, let it. Another resident explains that the government has no right to tell him where he can live. This is not a rational decision, it is defiance in its purest form. The government has cut off electricity and water, removed road signs, and posted warnings everywhere. They have even blocked roads to make access more difficult. It changes nothing. These 3 people remain, not because Wittenoom is a good place, but because it is their place. This is the dark side of isolation. Sometimes it becomes obsession, and the connection to a place overrides reason. Wittenoom is a memorial that isolation can be not only geographical, but psychological. Number 5. Birdsville, Queensland. The desert town with exactly 115 residents and a legendary pub. Birdsville is located 1,590 kilometres west of Brisbane, on the edge of the Simpson Desert. 115 people live here permanently, but once a year, the population explodes to 7,000. The Birdsville Races Festival transforms the tiny town into chaos of horse racing, beer, and dust. For 2 days in September, Birdsville is the centre of the Australian outback. People fly in, drive hundreds of kilometres just to be there. The roads are clogged with 4-wheel drives. The pub is so full you can barely breathe. And the racetrack vibrates with energy. But the remaining 51 weeks of the year? Pure isolation. The economy is based on tourism, cattle ranching, and the famous Birdsville Hotel Bar, one of the most isolated pubs in the world. Travellers stop here to refuel, drink a cold beer, and exchange stories of crossing the desert. The pub is more than just a pub. It is a social centre, an information hub, and sometimes the only human connection travellers have had for days. For the locals, Birdsville is a retreat. They live here because they love the silence, because they do not want neighbours, and because city life would be unbearable for them. One resident once said, "In Brisbane, I feel like I am in a cage. Here I can breathe." The isolation is not their curse, it is their comfort. Birdsville shows that some people do not stay despite the remoteness, but precisely because of it. The desert gives them something no city can offer: absolute freedom. Number 6. Leigh Creek, South Australia. The mining town that is dying but will not let go. Leigh Creek was once a thriving coal mining town with 2,500 residents. Then the mine closed in 2015, and the government decided to close the entire town and relocate the residents. Today, about 100 people still live there, in a town that officially should not exist. The government has cut off electricity and water. Houses have been demolished, schools closed. But the people who stayed refused to leave. Why? Because this is their home, and they are not willing to give it up just because a government in Adelaide considers it impractical. Leigh Creek is 550 kilometres north of Adelaide, surrounded by nothing but red desert. Supply is difficult, there is no work, and the future is bleak. But for those who remain, it is a matter of principle. They built their lives here, and nobody has the right to tell them they must leave. This is the Australian mentality in its most stubborn form. Leigh Creek is a sign that isolation is sometimes not geographical, but bureaucratic. Number 7. Menzies, Western Australia, the gold rush town that survived the boom. Menzies is located 130 kilometres north of Kalgoorlie, and at first glance, it looks like a ghost town. Once 10,000 people lived here during the gold rush of the 1890s. Today, there are about 100. But unlike other former boomtowns, Menzies is not dead. It is fighting. The town has a functioning hotel, a school, and a community determined not to become history. Why do they stay? Some because of farming, others because of small mining projects, and many simply because Menzies is their home. The isolation is hard. The nearest major town, Kalgoorlie, is far enough away that every shopping trip means a day's journey. But the residents say the community is strong. Everyone knows everyone, and in emergencies, people help each other. One resident explained, "In the city, you feel like a number. Here, you are a person." Menzies shows that isolation can also create a quality that has been lost in larger cities: real community. Number 8. Innaminka, South Australia, the place where the explorers died. Innaminka is famous for the wrong thing. It is the place where the Burke and Wills expedition ended in 1861, when 2 of Australia's most famous explorers starved to death here. Today, about 15 people live permanently in Innaminka, 1,065 kilometres northeast of Adelaide. The town exists mainly as a tourist station and supply point for travellers driving through the outback. But why do the few residents stay? The answer is business and passion. Innaminka is located near gas fields, and some residents work in the energy industry. Others run the local hotel and campground. But there is also a love for the land. Innaminka is located on Coober Creek, one of the few reliable watercourses in the region, and the landscape has a stark beauty that captivates some people. The isolation is extreme, but it is part of the appeal. A hotel owner once said, "If you cannot stand the silence, you do not belong here." Innaminka is a place for people who do not fear being alone. Number 9. Daly Waters, Northern Territory, the pub in the middle of nowhere. Daly Waters has 23 residents, but everyone who travels through the Northern Territory knows it. The reason? The Daly Waters pub, a legendary pub whose walls are covered with thousands of items left by travellers, including bras, hats, license plates, photos. It is part museum, part shrine, and completely bizarre. Daly Waters is located 650 kilometres south of Darwin on the Stuart Highway, the main artery of the Northern Territory. The town exists to supply travellers, petrol station, pub, campground. That is all. Why do people live here? Because the pub makes money, and because the owners love the place. There are no schools, no medical care, and the nearest town is hours away. But for the residents, Daly Waters is a hub of human stories. Every day, travellers from around the world come, tell their adventures, and leave a piece of themselves. The isolation is real, but it is mitigated by constant encounters. Daly Waters proves that you do not need many people to have a community. You just need the right ones. Number 10. Meekatharra, Western Australia, the mining town that never gives up. Meekatharra is located 765 kilometres northeast of Perth, and it is one of the longest continuously inhabited mining towns in Australia. Gold has been mined here since the 1890s, and despite all the ups and downs, about 800 people still live there. Why do they stay? Because mining never completely stops. There is always a new mine, a new project, a new hope. But it is not just the economy. Meekatharra has a strong Indigenous population, and for many, This is the land of their ancestors. The town offers education, basic medical care, and functioning infrastructure, which is rare in such remote areas. The isolation is nevertheless brutal. Perth is almost a day's drive away, and in summer, temperatures regularly climb above 45 degrees Celsius. But the people of Meekatharra have learned to live with the extremes. They say you get used to everything, and eventually, you miss the silence of the desert when you go to the city. Meekatharra shows that isolation is not only a physical condition, it is also mental, and some people need it to feel alive. Number 11. Tibooburra, New South Wales, the hottest inhabited town in Australia. Tibooburra is notorious for its heat. The town holds the record for the most consecutive days above 40 degrees Celsius, and in summer it can become unbearable here. Located 1,350 kilometres northwest of Sydney, about 150 people live in this tiny outback town. Why? Because Tibooburra is a supply centre for surrounding cattle stations, and because some people not only tolerate the heat, but love it. The town has 2 pubs, a school, and a police station. That is all you need, the residents say. The isolation means the nearest major town, Broken Hill, is 330 kilometres away, and every supply run is an expedition. But the community is close, and people help each other. One resident explained, "In Tibooburra, everyone knows your story, and that is not always pleasant, but it also means nobody is left alone. The heat is extreme, the isolation is real, but for the people here, it is home." Number 12. Onslow, Western Australia, the town that was rebuilt twice. Onslow is the town that refuses to die, no matter how many times nature tries. Originally founded in 1885, the town was completely relocated in 1925 after cyclones repeatedly destroyed it. Then, in the 1960s, it was relocated again, this time for the construction of a new port facility. Today, about 850 people live in Onslow, 1,380 kilometres north of Perth. Why do they stay? Because Onslow is an important port for the oil and gas industry, and because the work pays well. But the isolation is brutal. The nearest town, Kiwirrkurra, is 150 kilometres away, and cyclones regularly threaten the region. Nevertheless, people stay because Onslow offers economic opportunities that are lacking elsewhere. It is not a romantic place. It is hot, windy, and dangerous. But it is also a place where you can earn money and build a life if you are willing to accept the extremes. The bigger truth. What these towns teach us about Australia. In summary, these 12 towns do not exist because they are logical. They exist because people are stubborn, adaptable, and deeply connected to the land. Whether it is economic necessity, as in Coober Pedy, cultural connection, as in Kiwirrkurra, or pure defiance, as in Wittenoom, these places tell the story of a continent that was never fully tamed. Australia is a land of extremes, and these towns are proof that people will live anywhere if they find a reason. Some find it in money, some in community, some in cultural identity, and some simply in the silence that modern life can no longer offer. This is not weakness, but testimony to human determination. These towns will never become metropolises, but they will also not disappear as long as there are people willing to accept isolation as the price of freedom. They are living monuments to a way of life that has disappeared in most parts of the world. Here, there is no anonymity, no escape from community, and no possibility of hiding. Everyone knows everyone, and that can be both curse and blessing. What do you think? Could you live in one of these towns? Is isolation a curse or a gift? Should governments do more to support these remote communities? Or should people accept that some places are simply not habitable? Write your opinion in the comments. We very much appreciate the factual discussion in our community. Do not forget to rate the video and subscribe to our channel so you do not miss any further explorations of the world's most extreme places. Thank you very much for watching. Stay curious, and until next time.